Thursday Q&A discussion. We're going to be talking about Renergen today. We discussed Renergen, I think, very early in November, and then we gave guidance that we expected the price to drift slightly lower. It is now coming lower, and Pierre will reiterate some of the things that he gave to us the last time round, highlight some of the risks involved with the company and some of the potential that sits within the entity. And then we'll take your questions and Q&A afterwards. Shaun will give us a technical update just before that Q&A, and then we'll have a nice chat. Looking forward to it. Pierre, thank you. Take it away.
Thanks, Sarel. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining as always. It's from my side as well. So we're looking at Renergen. Not too long ago did the update on the company, so we can also look at just some developments since then. But I think by now we actually, the main thing that we were looking out for is more news on the IPO, so the listing that they want to do on the NASDAQ. Which we haven't received any news yet, but surely it should hopefully be around the corner. Looking at a macro environment, so the company will be exposed to helium and LNG, which especially helium being a scarce type of resource out there, and a lot of industries requiring it, such as MRIs in the medical industry, which is already established, and then also growing industries such as rockets and scientific research lab equipment requiring helium and so forth. And then on the future growth, so this is a company that has the potential to see a lot of growth. If you consider their market cap is 1.7 billion, and the management guided that they expected to reach EBITDA of 5.7 to 6.2 billion, which is quite a lot of growth from there. And then also with phase one being more the pilot project that's done. When we look at phase two, which will be the actual operations eventually, is about 12 times the size. So a lot of potential growth. But all of this doesn't come without risks. So some of the risks that we just would like to highlight on this investment is that some of the funding is still required, especially the NASDAQ IPO that I just mentioned, which is crucial. And also with that, thinking about the potential price that they would get, so how much potential share dilution or ownership dilution you'll get when this happens. And then also that EBITDA that management guided is only in about the 2027 financial year. So it's quite a long time until they have this business running commercially. So if you think about time value of money, so that's also a risk that comes into play. It would have its standard other risks that commodity type of companies would have, such as your operational execution, the commodities and currency exposures, and then just two other ones quickly to note. So the auditors did raise a going concern matter. If you think about the company is still loss-making, operations still needs to be set up and so forth. So that's kind of what comes through in that audit matter. So it's worth just pointing that out. And they could potentially become a takeover target. So if you think about the share price going lower, and even if it's at a premium, if it's not above, let's say wherever you perhaps bought or in the history, then it could lock in that lower rate. So that could also become a risk. So just in our view, the risk outweigh a bit of this growth and unique asset that they have at the moment for us. We just want to see it develop a bit further. So therefore we have a sell recommendation of intrinsic value of 7.80 cents. So what happened basically between November and now? So they continued with fundraising. So they sold 5.5% of the business, so Tetra 4, but that's basically the main operations of the business. And received 550 million. That was sold to Maglaku Gas Energy. That was to pay off the Standard Bank bridge loan that they have, and then the rest will go to funding of phase 2. And then some operational highlights. So the helium cold box has been successfully recommissioned and tested. They've completed that annual maintenance, which they decided that they wanted to bring forward after the leaks, and so that they identified and fixing the cold box. So that's done, and then also some environmental authorization and water use license was obtained for the overhead power line to the phase 2 project, and then some 8 wells was spudded at an early strike on 1 well. And the concentration rates of the helium still remains high, that they have above 3%. So just a quick recap again on the results. So we only have half-year results. They have a February year-end, so they should close off with their year-end now soon. Results should be expected before May, I guess, for the full year then. But just looking at the half-year so far, so as the business actually ramped up for the first time with the LNG production, and so you would see this dramatic increase in revenue, and also them producing a gross profit for the first time. But unfortunately also to occur is that the loss for the year actually increased, and that's because the expenses increased even more, as some well, maybe if we go to the next slide, I'll touch on the expenses, then you can see exactly what happened there. So you can see this large increase in the expenses. So things like your employee costs and depreciation, those previously they were able to capitalize them as they started, let's say, building the business or so, before the assets became ready for use, as they classified. So those now had to be expensing. And then just as operations would increase, these expenses will also increase in line also with your repairs and maintenance, selling and distribution, and things like that. And then they also had some FX losses due to currency movements. And then this cash flow chart here is just to give you an idea of where the business also is at the moment. So it's still in development phase. So a lot of the financing, so the debt and the equity that they have to get to finance the business is is financing the investing activities and also the operation. So as operations is not yet profitable, it also needs to carry the business for the time being. So some of our main risks, as I highlighted earlier, is the time value of money and the possible share dilution that could occur. So if we take our base case valuation, and I say what do we perhaps estimate the share or the value would be in 2027. And then I just show you what, in our valuation, what's the impact of the time value of money. So then that would decrease the value about by 30 Rand. And then just because of the more shares that has to be issued, so you owning a little bit smaller percentage of the business as they issue equity, that would be about a 20 Rand impact. And that goes to our base case value of around the 8 Rand. And then this just talks to the unique asset that they have. So there's only about 9 or so countries really producing helium around the world. So some might have now larger reserves, but if you look at the concentration rates, Renergen is their wells are producing above 3%, which is dramatically higher than these, which could make them more profitable in the sense of how they're extracted and so forth. Share price performance. So the share outperformed up until about March 2022, and then from there it started underperforming the index. And then on a valuation front, as mentioned, we have a sell recommendation with an intrinsic value of 780 cents, and just using a price to book ratio, you could see how the value climbed, and then now recently it decreased. We're sitting, I think, just above 2 at the moment. Thanks. I'll hand over to Shaun now for the technicals.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, you can see the chart there of Renergen. You can see the share price is trading far below its 200-day moving average, and the long-term trend remains bearish. In the medium term, you can see the share price also, it's just below its 21-day and 40-day moving averages. And the trend, I'm calling it neutral, is moving sideways within a narrow range, narrow trading range. And usually with a sideways market is a sign of consolidation. As the buyers and the sellers wait for more information. As Pierre said, now I think they're waiting for a lot of information coming out of the company soon. In the short term, the share price is testing the lower support of this trading range. It's about 11.50 Rand, and I see it's also trading there at the moment. This graph was until earlier this morning before the market opened. So if that support level holds, we could expect the share price to break out of that very, very narrow trading range above its 21-day and 40-day moving averages, and then it could retest that upper resistance level around about 14.10 Rand. The 200-day moving average is about at 16.10 Rand level, which will obviously present longer-term resistance. If you look at the bottom oscillator there, the MACD indicator, it is trading in oversold territory and looks set to cross above its signal line to give a bullish signal. The shorter term stochastic indicator, although it is bullish, it does seem to be losing momentum. So it's a bit mixed signals there, let me put it that way. You can see the longer term support level around about 10 Rand. That's at low in October. I don't know. I would say it'd be prudent to wait for a breakout of the sideways trend before getting too excited about the share. So it might be best to rather wait for entry level much lower, below that support 10 Rand. And as Pierre said, now we're trading at about a 4 Rand premium to its intrinsic value of 7.80 Rand. And as Pierre said, now obviously we've got a sell recommendation on the stock. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawnee. Thanks, Pierre. I want to stay on the chart just for a second before we start asking questions. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. If you could just tell me whether you can see my mouse moving. You can actually, Pierre. Okay. So if you look at this chart here where I'm circling now, that was the previous trading range where it was hanging about, and then it broke down, right? And now it's back in another trading range on this side here. And this to me reiterates to the valuation that Pierre got to, that this thing can move anywhere. If they don't secure funding, if they don't do that NASDAQ listing, is big trouble. Even though that sale of 5.5% of Tetra 4 came at $550 million and bought them some time, which should actually have been a very positive thing for the share. It just shows you that the market's still uncertain whether these guys are going to manage to secure the NASDAQ listing and the relevant funding they require to get this resource out of the ground. So at this stage, I think this is a wild punt. This is not anything that should be considered part of a portfolio, but rather as a very speculative trade. And as Shaun has reiterated, if we do go back and test those previous lows at 10, we could actually see the intrinsic value of 780 coming into play over the course of a couple of months as this whole thing gets dragged out. But surely the potential's there. The company has got a resource that's scarce. It's got a concentration that Pierre has highlighted is much higher than the other guys. So there's two sides of the coin here, but it still remains a coin toss. It's a wild punt. Just remember that when you're trading in the Renergen. Okay, I'm going to throw the floor open for questions for Pierre, and then we'll take it from there. Let me see the chat. There. Go to the chat. Clive says, thanks for the presentation and the technical, Shaun. This is a share I'm keenly watching. Yeah, Clive, I think it's definitely got potential. And I mean, most of us, the market fuels on fear and greed. And obviously there is potential for a massive jump here should they get things right. I just think it's going to take longer than what most of us are prepared to sit for. So maybe exercising some patience before jumping in is a good idea. Pierre, I don't see any other questions. Any other questions, guys? It looks like that covered it, man. Thank you very much for sharing your Thursday with us. Thank you for sharing your insights, Pierre. Shaun, thank you very much for helping us with the technicals. We'll be back next week, and next week we'll update British American Tobacco, I think. All right, so have a fantastic Thursday. Have a good afternoon and keep well. Cheers.
Yes.